Yeah, if you want to gamble, I think that the Saints in general are a bit of a gamble. Cooks, okay, but I didn't like his slight inconsistency last season. He didn't produce every game. He didn't produce in 3/4 of games, to be honest. So I don't like that. But yeah, I mean this is a nice late round pickup. I think that I mean look, nobody's going to be looking New Orleans' way after Cooks. So I think that Michael Thomas is going to sneak under a lot of radar.
Right. I mean, especially if you're in a dynasty league. My dynasty league, we had a draft that's just for the rookie players we do every year. A little bit after the draft, we do 4 rounds. It's just the rookies. Not every dynasty league does that. A lot of people do, waiver wires. There's different ways to do dynasty leagues, but if that already hasn't been done, I would think Michael Thomas would be a really good dynasty league pickup to stash on your bench and see what happens. But obviously, pretty much all these guys that we're talking about, nobody's a top, somewhere between the first and the 5th round. All of these guys that we're talking about are mid to probably late round pickups.
Well, except for this guy, right? Number 1 on your list, and in my opinion, the biggest gamble out there is Ezekiel Elliott. I mean,
and the reason why he's high on my list is because as a running back, he could really see the most touches. But then again, they also have Alfred Morris, so that could take away too.
Maybe. Wow. When I say that, when I get hardcore and I say don't ever draft a rookie, this is the kind of guy I'm talking about.
Sure.
For me, this is a huge gamble, not only for the real-life Dallas Cowboys, but I think he's a huge gamble for fantasy players. Okay, there's no denying that this guy's one of the better halfbacks to come down the pike in a draft or two. Okay, there's no denying that he has the skills and everything like this. And the offensive line in Dallas somehow got that running game to 9th in yardage last season. Okay, and that was with Darren McFadden as the feature back. We can put that in quotes. But again, this is the team that was tied for 29th in that red zone scoring. And you can blame that on the quarterback woes, but I would go the other way too. It's like, what? They can't get Darren McFadden, a guy who specializes in hitting the hole, in from the goal line? That kind of scares me. That kind of scares me when you can't get a guy, and that's his job to do his job. I mean, this offensive line since a couple of years ago has been touted as an all-pro line, but is it really?
I would probably say that they are.
Okay.
But go ahead. You finish your thought.
Oh, so my other question is can they come through the preseason? And again, yes. Okay, I would agree with you. I would say this is an all-pro line, but this is fantasy football.
Right.
And we got to get touchdowns for our running back, particularly since in a lot of leagues now you only have one. And if you're gonna be rolling the dice on Mr. Elliott here in his rookie season, wow, you need that all-pro line. Is it there?
Well, I would say that when you watch Dallas, I would blame a lot of it on the quarterback. When Romo's there, and they got Des Bryant. Des Bryant was out, and Jason Witten's getting up there. You got to have Romo in there for that to work. And if the passing threat is there with that offensive line, if everybody's back, I think Ezekiel Elliott, depending on if he goes in as the opening day starter, I think he's got a really good chance behind that line, and with the play action of Tony Romo, the threat of Des Bryant, I think he's got a really good chance to get a lot of yards and at least get a lot of touches. And it's hard to say what he'll actually do behind that line, but in short yardage situations, I think it's possible that he could surprise a lot of people and end up being really good. But I think it all depends on how good is Romo, how good is Witten, because those guys got to take the pressure off the run.
Yes.
And they're going to use the run to take the pressure off and set up the play action.
How you say that nobody would be surprised if he became a quality player, let's say, but I think that this goes the other way too. I don't think anybody would be surprised if he is self-immolated either.
Of course,
I don't think
no
that
question.
Again, I mean, here is a guy who, and the only knock against this guy was the attitude, the outspokenness, right. The incident where he's questioning the coaches about the play calling, in college. That's what you don't like to see, especially in a market like Dallas. Because that could be self-destructive as hell. That is the way to ego inflation.
I would be willing to take a gamble on him as my third running back in a PPR league.
Wow.
I could maybe sneak in. I want to get my goal would be to get 2 really good running backs and build the rest of my team. And if I could sneak him in, say in the 7th round, 6th, 7th round, I would love to have a guy. I would take a gamble on him.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that hits as a third running back, obviously I'm already going with the assumption that my other 2 running backs are going to probably, I'm banking on them to carry me for the whole year no matter what. But if he hits, all of a sudden I got 3 good running backs.
Yeah, I can see your team forming, but I think that you would have to be an early pick in the odd number rounds, because I can imagine like round 7, pick 1 or 2. You could.
Yeah.
That's what the crystal ball is telling me. I can imagine that. But wow, if you have 3 halfbacks and Ezekiel is your third, wow, you've drafted well in your first 7 or 8 rounds. You've done well.
Well, I would think that he would fall because of these. I think there's a lot of people that would be afraid. But it also depends on how preseason goes.
Right.
I mean, it depends on your league. Some running backs fall. My PPR league, we place a lot of value on quarterbacks. It's a 2-quarterback league. Granted, we change the rules every year to make it interesting, but we don't want running backs to have so much value that it just because there's such a drop off after the 10th or 11th running back, there's such a drop off. So we tried to compensate for that with the 2-quarterback league. Mm-hmm. And so it makes running backs not quite as valuable, but still important. A lot of leagues are not like that. So it might be very difficult to get him as your third running back, but that would be the case where I would be willing to take a gamble. I don't know that I want him to be my second running back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's too rich for my blood at that point, right?
Right.
That's tough to see because, again, I think that's the biggest gamble on the whole board. Maybe even in the whole first round. Fantasy, real life, whatever you want to talk. I think that's really – they're putting a lot on this guy. I mean, okay, so the Rams are putting a lot on Jared Goff as well, but they're also being led by a coach who goes 8-8 through half of his 22-year NFL career.
Right.
So the expectations aren't quite as high as being in, football land Dallas, I don't think. And, I mean, again, this is a team that's supposed to have been a Super Bowl contender the past 2, 3, 4 years, and they really kind of haven't. And I really think that Mr. Jones and company are really feeling time advancing on this team, and I think the window is slowly closing on this team. So
I think they're going to be losing patience.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of weight on Mr. Elliott already. But we'll see how this turns out because he could be awesome. He could seriously be one of the best halfbacks since AP, maybe.
Possibly. Yeah, it's definitely possible.
The raw talent is there.
Do you have any other rookies that you find intriguing, or maybe even like when you first you read my article and you had a different idea of how to go about it? Maybe there were players that impact that you don't draft, but because they were drafted in real life, they could possibly open things up for other fantasy players.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have 2. And I really think that this is one of my goals in life. This is one of my bucket list things. Is that I want to see or make offensive linemen standard in fantasy football. There's got to be a way to do it. there's got to be a way. I mean, when the left tackle is the second most highly paid guy in NFL football, and we don't even account for him in fantasy football, that's a problem. Now, we love fantasy football. Fantasy football is the greatest thing since, before sliced bread. But nothing's perfect. Nothing is perfect. So I'd like to see offensive line in there. So my immediate thought when I saw the list is, well, yeah, of course, lots of skill players, a lot of wide receivers, a lot of skill players and stuff like that. But at least a couple of linemen that I saw in the first round this year are really going to change things up fantasy-wise. Here's who I got. Of course, Laramie Tunsil. What a steal by the Dolphins at number 13. And I can't say all of it because clearly a lot of teams before number 13 were just not interested in an offensive lineman. God knows why. But, really just kind of dropping a little bit because of this stupid thing with marijuana, for God's sake, in college. Yeah. My God, can you imagine smoking weed in college? Unbelievable. But this is a quality player. Now, here's a guy who's going to start at one of the most important positions in football in week one, probably. And I am really liking the possibilities of Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker. I'm really thinking that, especially with a guy who was kind of known for pass blocking in college, in front of a guy in Ryan Tannehill, who a lot of people expected to kind of break out last year, but didn't.
Yeah.
I think Tannehill is going to be very overlooked, even for a second-string quarterback. And I think he might be a sneaky good pickup because of his extra protection this year. And like I say, I really like the possibilities of Landry and Parker, who were already pretty good fat guys last year. Devontae Parker's in his second year, right? So here's a guy you can look at sophomore fall off. I think that these guys should be nice pickups. Already they looked pretty good. Given that few extra seconds, they could get some nice stats this year.
Oh, no question. I think the Dolphins got an absolute stud when they got Tunsil. I think it's unfortunate the way that whole thing went down for him financially, but if you're the Dolphins, man, you got a quality lineman like that just falling into your lap, who most definitely is going to open things up for Tannehill. If he's got extra time, they've got talent at wide receiver. They had talent last year. And, I totally agree. I think Landry is going to be he's the kind of receiver that, he could be your number 2 receiver, and you could probably get him later than for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and same with his teammate. I mean, both those guys, man, totally. I think that's a really great way to look at it. He's going to open things up for some of these other players.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. When I commented to you, basically it's the Ezekiel Elliott principle in reverse. Okay, you take a guy, he's got skills, and you put him behind that awesome line. Well, putting an awesome line in front of a dude who has skills should produce the same effect, right? So that's my premise here. And I think the other pick is kind of a no-brainer, which is one of the picks I really liked the best was Ryan Kelly, the center. Indisputably the best center in the draft, going to the Indianapolis Colts, whose offensive line allowed Andrew Luck to be completely ravaged last season, or at least the second half of last season. I mean, last year I had, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, I had Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers by far 1-2 best quarterbacks. I was just like, okay, I'm going for these guys early. If I don't get these guys, I'm waiting until like round 8 or whatever. I'm going to load up on halfbacks and wide receivers until then. This year, I mean, Luck might be – I mean, a lot of people are going to be going for Adrian Peterson, but I can't imagine that Luck is not a top 8 or 10 pick.
He's still definitely a top 10 pick. He's got
I mean, with a guy handing him the ball properly. I mean, I remember I saw one game right before he finally gave up. Dude dinged up
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, where he He got 3 missed snaps, I believe. Oh my God, it was purgatory for the guy.
Yeah.
So, just based on that, just any extra protection they give him,